Good evening. This is Maestro with the Dawn of War 2 Retribution Elite Modcast, and what we have here is the long-awaited VODs for the Division A Finals of Elite League. Our first player is going to be, zooming in way too close, is going to be DarkHero. DarkHero will be playing as the Plague Champion. This is a Chaos ranged hero who can later get melee weapons, can also heal and repair. His opponent will also be someone who can heal and repair. It's going to be BestN00b, playing as the Orc Mekboy. This hero, aside from being able to heal and repair, can also teleport and harass at ranged. Now, these two players are probably the best two players in Elite Mod at this time. And of course, it makes sense that they are the finalists of Elite League, so they are the best two players. But I mean, aside from this tournament, from what I've observed from basically their results in other tournaments, I think it is pretty safe to say that these are the two best players. Certainly BestN00b, yeah. And then, I mean, DarkHero, yeah. I mean, I think the next best after that, probably Shroom. I'm sure there are some players who are going to disagree with me, but just going based on what I've looked at from results, I think these are the two best players in Elite Mod at the moment. There have been a lot of greats in this game, but their time has come and gone, which is kind of just the way of things in really not just gaming, but also in sports too as well. There was a time when, you know, best players were players like Tex, Holy Hammer, Dark Riku, Toil Ali, even Vindicare X. But, you know, now in this day and age, we live in the day of BestN00b and DarkHero. And our matchup that we have right here, starting out on Calderis Refinery, Orcs versus Chaos, it is something that it's tough, you know. These days, I'm very rarely confident on who I actually think is favored in one match or the other, so I kind of just go by what has historically been said. And there have definitely been times in the history of this game when the overall matchup of Orcs versus Chaos has been said to favor Chaos. That also being said, based on some things I've heard from some good players in Elite Mod in the current day, some people say that Orcs are in a better overall place in terms of balance, in terms of the Elite Mod. So we'll see how each player manages this matchup. BestN00b doing a little bit better at the moment, it would look like, except for the fact that we do actually have Heretics bashing on this side as well. So the Sluggas for BestN00b are both going for it. They did bash the generators with those burners. They even get the decap. It looks like they're looking for the full cap. Now here's definitely a strength that the Mekboy is going to have in this matchup. That electric armor is going to make life extremely hard for any of the Heretic squads that are out on the field. So power bashes seem pretty much equalized. Of course, we do have the full cap actually finishing for BestN00b on DarkHero's natural. How is DarkHero doing on BestN00b's natural? Looks like he will at least get the decap. I don't see much of an answer to this, so I wouldn't even be surprised if he's able to get the full cap himself. DarkHero, though, is in a position where he seems to be kind of pinned in his base at the moment. We see the Mekboy sitting in cover there. So the Mekboy is certainly going to be very, very strong against the Heretics at the moment. He can sit in cover, bleed them from ranged. If they get close, he can just teleport away. And if he is okay with them getting close, he can just activate the electric armor, which will absolutely electrocute them. You know, I was going to say shred them or burn them, but really electrocute kind of makes the most sense here. Man, I mean, we're at the point where DarkHero is even just trying to sit in cover with Heretic Worship to try to outfight the Mekboy in this one engagement. This Plague Champion's so low and wasn't getting that healing anymore. Okay, Heretics will be looking to recapture this, but the Mekboy is here to harass them. But of course, once they go straight on into melee, we are going to see the electric armor activated. So 10 power melee damage. And we're at the point where literally all of the models, except for the Aspiring Champion, is gone. Yeah, I mean, at first I was going to say I'm surprised that he left, but it actually makes sense that he left, because head-to-head, I actually don't think he's going to do well against the Aspiring Champion. He already finished killing all of the regular Heretic models, so that's why he decided to retreat out of there. But massive map control advantage in favor of BestN00b. Now, there is an actual power farm down for DarkHero. That's pretty much the silver lining, because that's literally the only point on the map that he controls. And the combination of these Storm Boys as well as this Slugger squad, I think it's going to make it incredibly difficult for DarkHero to get this back. I don't even know if that single Heretic model, which is really just an Aspiring Champion, gets to stay alive. I don't think it does. I think DarkHero might even be... I'm actually surprised it's staying alive as long as it is. Okay, it's finally gone. Really never stood a chance. But DarkHero has upgraded to the Plague Sword, so he's no longer... Oh, but man, trading out the kill there. Definitely a big boon for DarkHero. I thought it was a little unfortunate at first when he lost that Heretic squad, but trading it out for the Slugger squad does even things up a bit. So that Plague Sword will be picked up by the Plague Champion. So he's no longer going to be choosing to try to outshoot the Mekboy. And instead, he wants to be able to more effectively deal with the melee coming out of BestN00b. And we already saw that Plague Sword being put to good effect. Now, this Plague Sword, aside from just the fact that it does 50 power melee DPS, which isn't actually technically more valuable against the infantry armor of all of these Orc infantry squads, the real big thing here is that undead... the enemies that he slays, he will actually linger as undead allies. And we saw that there, where there was actually a Stormboy model in DarkHero's unit tab. Also combined with the Mucus Discharge, just to give that Plague Champion some staying power. So DarkHero is kind of stabilized, but it's still definitely BestN00b with the advantage. He's got more map control. He's still exerting the victory point pressure. He's now probably going to get even more of a generator bash, and we even see this brand new Slugger squad has even been upgraded to get their burners so that they can just burn things down real fast. And they're barely being stopped. They're being shot at by Chaos Space Marines, who typically have somewhat low-ish range DPS for a Tier 1 unit. Comes out to, I believe, about little less than 40 overall range DPS, which isn't terrible, but it is lower than most of the other Tier 1 range squads, if we're comparing it to things like Shooter Boys, Tactical Marines, Dire Avengers. Maybe it's actually more in the middle. But it's still not super strong. Like, the way we saw there was the Sluggers were not really just getting shredded or burned down. Instead, they were actually able to tank the Chaos Space Marine fire as they continued to burn down the generators. Alright, so Plague Champion is moving forward. I'm not entirely sure what he's looking for here. He wouldn't be a great generator basher by himself. He doesn't want to find himself getting focused down by ranged squads either. Of course, though, the Plague Champion as a single entity is your better choice for the squad that you want to lead in, since he won't bleed. He does also have Mucus Discharge. However, he has been suppressed there. We do have some Grenade Launcher Heretics. DarkHero does like to get the Grenade Launcher Heretics. Grenade Launcher Heretics actually do some pretty good burst damage against the shooters, and eventually we will see the shooters retreat. 3 units against 2, as well as, I think, just the kind of units that were there definitely gave DarkHero the advantage. Chaos Space Marines and the Plague Champion can, of course, just fight the shooters in melee once they get in range, and DarkHero was able to close the gap. So more and more we're seeing DarkHero actually stabilize. Definitely the early advantage was definitely in favor of BestN00b, but DarkHero stabilizing. Map control is actually pretty even at the moment. And he's not suffering any more losses. Noise Marines will be coming out along the way. Noise Marines are an interesting choice. I think I'm starting to see them more and more often, and I'm also starting to personally believe in Noise Marines more. Now, against Orcs, if they can be used against... really, if they can use their Sonic Blaster against any of the infantry squad, since they are a Flamer unit that does area of effect damage, they'll actually do pretty good damage to any of the Orc squads. Not so great against the Mekboy, but against any of the Orc squads, they will do quite well. And then... of course, they also have the ability to silence the Shooter Boys, prevent them from shooting, which is probably the most value that can be gotten out of them, though they do have to worry about getting into close enough range to actually be able to do that, since it is very possible that they can be suppressed on approach, controlled. Obviously, Cacophony is there if either the Storm Boys or the Sluggers get into melee. So here's another push for the generators from BestN00b. And unfortunately for DarkHero, his army is split up in multiple directions on different sides of the map. Plague Champion is getting burned down by the shooter DPS before he can really get much done. And this is looking like a one engagement for BestN00b, which he should be able to convert into a power bash. Heretics still in melee, and they do eventually get wiped, so that's another squad wipe for DarkHero. Even Chaos Space Marines are in a huge amount of trouble. Let's see how many wipes, how many more models can be killed. Can he even, if he can finish the squad here, that would be crazy. Okay, he does not finish the squad, but even losing those 2 models hurts a ton for DarkHero. DarkHero trying to answer this back with a generator bash of his own, sneaking the Noise Marines around in the back. And especially given that he is able to achieve the generator bash himself, if he had at least managed to keep that squad of heretics alive, things would actually be pretty even for DarkHero. As it is, though, since the heretic wipe did happen, I do think this ultimately is a win for BestN00b. He also does have the lead in tech, which he probably would have had even if DarkHero had kept his heretics alive. So it definitely is BestN00b, who is looking to have the better end of things. Still has the victory point lead, so putting a lot of that pressure on. Definitely an advantage, actually a major advantage of the Mekboy compared to the Plague Champion in this matchup. Plague Champion, arguably the lowest mobility hero in the entire game, whereas Mekboy, just by virtue of being a teleporting hero, is one of the highest mobility heroes in the game. So he should, at least in theory, have the edge in terms of map control. In particular, especially, he has a way more potential to actually threaten decaps and even full caps on DarkHero's natural than DarkHero will against BestN00b's. And certainly with a smaller army, with the Plague Champion against the Mekboy, DarkHero should realistically never really be able to catch up in map control if engagements continue to just trade out evenly, and especially if engagements end up going in BestN00b's favor. So we really are going to need some decisive engagement wins for DarkHero. See him starting to pick up some squad wipes, or at the very least see if he can get the kill on the War Truck. Now, DarkHero will be putting out the Blood Crusher. Blood Crusher won't really be able to put threat on the War Truck, barring any very serious micro mistakes out of BestN00b. But as BestN00b again saying, he is, along with DarkHero, they're probably the 2 best players in the Elite mod. I'm not foreseeing any such micro mistakes coming out of the War Truck that would make it likely that it goes down from the Blood Crusher alone. Theoretically, I feel like theoretically, the War Truck should be able to kite the Blood Crusher forever. However, that's not entirely true. Theoretically, the War Truck should be able to kite the Blood Crusher all the way until it gets back to its own base. At that point, you would need some kind of additional unit, which is why we do see the tank bust is coming. And in fact, I'm not even sure if the Blood Crusher was even seen by BestN00b, but I think probably just his understanding of the race and the meta, he probably just understands that it's most likely going to be a Blood Crusher on the way. And this also does put things in a bit of a precarious position for DarkHero. Both players were able to get Tier 2 vehicles out. They went for the cheap vehicles, but DarkHero was in a position where economically he could not afford a vehicle unit to come along either with it. So we saw Cult of Speed on the War Truck, and probably the intention there was to move the tank buses into position to further threaten the Blood Crusher. I think that was deterred by the Plague Cloud that was put on the field. Ultimately, the Plague Cloud actually not achieving that much, and I'm not even sure why it's going toward DarkHero's own units instead of at least being moved in the direction of the War Truck. And truth be told, it wouldn't have actually gotten that much value, given that DarkHero was basically in retreat. Not all of his units were technically using a retreat mechanic, but it was definitely DarkHero trying to disengage. Mekboy teleporting in here. It will also be the Storm Boys jumping in. They will get a stun on a few of the Heretic models, and these are not melee Heretics. Meanwhile, the Chaos Space Marines are in a ton of trouble as well. Noise Marines are on an island, all surrounded by a bunch of Orcs. They use Cacophony to knock down most of the Orc army, actually doing pretty well at that, while the Blood Crusher gets really, really low, eating a few Tank Buster rockets, and the Noise Marines will go down as well. I'm guessing the intention behind the Noise Marines was to silence, in that particular engagement, was to silence the Tank Busters. Clearly, though, in the end, definitely worked out in BestNoob's favor. And this is looking really, really rough for DarkHero at this point in time. Lost the Noise Marines. And ultimately, the Noise Marines actually, they really did have a lot of trouble getting value in this particular game. They did get a few generator bashes, which is probably the best value that they got. But they did not really have, get a lot of value in any fights. Okay, Bloodletters are now out for DarkHero. Probably just some of the intention behind that to tie up the Tank Busters. First and foremost, tie up the Tank Busters, and then secondarily tie up either of the Shooter Boy squads. Of course, they're also immune to suppression because they fear nothing. Heal coming down for the Storm Boys, so we're seeing a few more upgrades. We have the improved rocket packs from the Storm Boys, increasing their jump range and giving them the Bomber Boys ability. And then we also have the Avataste, or rather it's the battery pack, which grants the Avataste ability on the Mekboy. And it's been a very, very long time since DarkHero has had control of the victory points. Time is running out for him because he is at the point where he's about to have less than triple digits in terms of victory points. Plague Champion starting to take some damage here. I don't know if he wants to take all the damage. Certainly doesn't want to die. He will commit the Mucus Discharge. So that is now on cooldown. Does also mean he's lacking energy. Although I don't think he has any other abilities aside from Breath of Nurgle. And while DarkHero is even making an attempt to get in here, we see just BestNoob using the Mekboy to backcap. And this is a horrible position for DarkHero. He's having the Bloodletters capture this. If anything, I almost feel like he might need to send the Bloodletters teleport up here, get the Mekboy off the point. Maybe he realized that, but probably a little too late. The Mekboy will actually get a full cap on DarkHero's natural. Okay, eventually Mekboy teleports away after completing the full cap. I mean, BestNoob needs to... I'm sorry, DarkHero needs to take this back, because he's not going to be controlling this anytime soon. He can't put the kind of control on BestNoob's natural victory point the way BestNoob can do it to his. Instead, he will be running back the Corrin Marines. So he'll eventually get it, but he lost a lot of victory points and a lot of time there. Meanwhile, the map has also been painted red. BestNoob really using the teleport of the Mekboy just to oppress DarkHero with map control. I was going to say, at that time, DarkHero might have been looking to see if he can get a wipe on the Mekboy, but he didn't really have the Corrin Marines as well as the Bloodletters in position where they could have threatened the Mekboy. And he just teleported away from the Blood Crusher. Tank Buster Barrage will go out. Does succeed in finishing off the Chaos Shrine of Nurgle. And now what are they targeting? Okay, Bloodletters are in here. Bloodletters will fight the Storm Boys head-to-head. We are going to have the Tank Busters moving back with the truck. However, now the Plague Champion will be able to tie them up, so for the time being, they will not be able to put any more pressure on the Blood Crusher, so the Blood Crusher does manage to stay alive. And it is very interesting just watching the use of the Blood Crusher. Historically, I always thought of the Blood Crusher primarily as a unit that you want to get, specifically when you have a tech advantage and when it is just completely uncountered. And certainly, it still can perform extremely well in those circumstances. But these days, and perhaps it's always been like this, and I just was not good at observing it, I'm just noticing more and more that the Blood Crusher is quite simply a meta choice. Perhaps the meta choice for Chaos in Tier 2. In some cases, I definitely hear about Bloodletters being the go-to purchase, particularly against Tyranids. Oh no, okay, Plague Champion. Plague Champion's still so low. Okay, they do succeed in taking out the Blood Crusher. Corrin Marines, no, those are Bloodletters, but the Corrin Marines are there too. We'll continue to tie up the Tank Busters. And finally, DarkHero is able to make some things happen, but he will lose a few of these Heretic models. we are going to see another one of those plague clouds, and this will be able to scare Best Noob off the field. Probably just going to be a retreat from those Storm Boys afterward. Otherwise, they will accidentally start re-engaging, which they actually possibly could have re-engaged against the Bloodletters. But even with one engagement, DarkHero is having trouble maintaining control of the map. He's about to suffer a decap, and now victory points are evened out at 1-1. He only controls Best Noob's natural, and he can't hold on to that for very long. Oh my. Wow, Slugga somehow got into melee. They killed a Heretic squad all the way in base. And those were, I believe, a melee Heretic squad as well. If anything, I'm surprised how slowly Best Noob is getting back on this point, given just... Best Noob holding his natural victory point is just so rough for DarkHero, which sounds ridiculous, that it's so bad for DarkHero that Best Noob controls his natural victory point, but it actually is. Because DarkHero is having enough trouble controlling his own natural victory point. Anyway, look at this. Oh, look at this. I mean, I guess I didn't really mean look at the teleporter platform, but the Orc battle wagon that is on the way. Orc battle wagon, one of my favorite units to watch. We'll see if it's put to good effect here. So we're going to see the Armor of Pestilence, for some reason labeled as Jumpy, also Choppy Infantry. That's clearly a mistake there, or a bug. And it's also one that's definitely been around for a very long time. So right now, DarkHero trying to use the Plague Champion as a capping unit. Man, if he does want to keep up using the Plague Champion like this, I think he needs to switch out the Plague Sword for the Plague Fist so that he can use Pestilent Strike to give him that damage resistance that enables him to just cap under fire like that without trading out a significant amount of his health. Alright, now things have been rough for DarkHero for much of this game, but for the moment he's still in it. Holding 2 of the victory points. Oh god. But he is not equipped to deal with the Blood Crusher. He really just isn't. He needs something else. And the problem with that is that he doesn't have much time for something else. Oh boy, what is this Mekboy doing? Using Mega Rumbler right here for some reason. I think he intended to teleport in, but I don't think it quite worked out the way he wanted to. Probably just made some kind of mistake there. Yeah, DarkHero stabilized, but I think the Battle Wagon is just going to be too much for him. Because I don't think... He would need something else. Okay, yeah, and he calls the GG. I was going to say, he needs something else to deal with the Battle Wagon. Blood Crusher is absolutely inadequate. He needs something at range, and he just doesn't have it. And he's even fairly far off from even getting a Havoc out with a Las Cannon, so he will concede there. And that will be Best Noob going up 1-0 in this series. So now let's move on to game number 2. Game number 2 of our series will take place on Quest Heresy. Best Noob this time will be switching off to the Tech Marine, shooty Space Marine ranged hero with a gun for every occasion and the ability to repair vehicles. And his opponent, DarkHero, will be playing as the Farseer, support, spellcasting, buffing hero for the Eldar. Opening caps happening. DarkHero going for more conservative opening caps, just getting some of the closest, basically the closest power nodes, although he hasn't started a requisition point yet. A little bit more of aggressive play by DarkHero. Just kidding, I met Best Noob, who is actually taking one of the contested requisition points. In fact, this is pretty much the only contested requisition point in the game. In fact, it's just about the only contested... No, there is a contested power node. So... we do see a very clear economic focus from DarkHero at this time. He is not even capturing his natural victory point. We'll be looking for more power, as well as his first starting natural requisition. But this is definitely a very interesting look to try to grab power by DarkHero. Of course, normally you think of power income as primarily coming from your natural power node, where you will put a full farm of generators. Normally that's kind of the idea and the intention. But DarkHero is trying to get as much power income as he can get without actually having any generators yet, without having to build any yet. And he is sitting at plus 25 compared to just the plus 15 for BestN00b, which I do think that does make a bit of a difference, especially if he is looking to invest power in Tier 1. And oh my, look at what we see here, the double Howling Banshee play. And the double Howling Banshee play, I mean, I've seen it a long time ago, and a long time ago I just called it extremely high risk, high reward. Oh no. Can this Tech Marine go down? The other squad of Howling Banshees is there. That's 100% a kill on the Tech Marine. So that will be the end of the Tech Marine right there. Stabbed up by some Howling Banshees. Oh, but that Howling Banshee who did get the sync kill will go down in return. But it's not quite an even trade. Definitely a trade in DarkHero's favor. But at this point, though, you know, from what I've seen in the Elite mod and from what I know about how heroes like the Farseer work, it is actually just pretty meta to go with double Howling Banshees with the Farseer. I wouldn't say it's the only build, and I would say there are plenty of times where we see, where we don't see double Howling Banshees out of the Farseer. But I'm at the point where it no longer surprises me to see double Howling Banshee as long as it is the Farseer. Look at all those railings getting knocked down. Since the Farseer, oh man, a lot of Howling Banshees going down here. So even though the Farseer really is the hero to play double Howling Banshees with, there still just is that risk that you can bleed models, and DarkHero did bleed a lot from those Howling Banshees. I'm going to say off the top of my head, I think the requisition cost for Howling Banshee model replacements are 35, and we'll check. It is indeed 35. But, you know, they aren't exactly super tanky. So, certainly, for those of you who've been following along for a while, and especially if you do actually like really playing these things, you kind of know why double Howling Banshees... Ooh, nice grenades there. Came so close to actually wiping the squad. Why double Howling Banshees is a thing with the Farseer. And the main reason is the Spirit Stones war gear. Spirit Stones, the way it works, it is a healing war gear, but instead of healing a targeted squad, it heals in an area. So it's actually entirely possible to heal both Howling Banshee squads with one cast of the ability. And then a warrior that plays somewhat less of a role but can still work and synergize with it is getting the Armor of Fortune. So a lot of DarkHero's Howling Banshee squads have not been playing as close to the Farseer, though, so we are seeing some of those models getting killed. And a rather big build coming out of DarkHero. He's getting these double Rangers, which probably does explain why... It actually explains a lot for why DarkHero made that emphasis on getting the 3 power nodes. Committing to this build, although Howling Banshees do not cost any power to field, he is saving... They do cost requisition, and he used that requisition to get the additional Howling Banshee squad instead of buying the generators for the power income. And he compensated for that by getting the power income through the multiple nodes, which is what enables him to eventually get the Rangers out on the field. He's got a much bigger army. Double Rangers are something that can be pretty strong against Space Marines. Particularly effective against the Scouts, especially since we have Shotgun Scouts committed on both of them. Yeah, and there's actually a lot I like about this. Ooh, Shotgun Scout's going to get knocked down by the Kinetic Pulse. Tech Marine's starting to be in a lot of trouble. He will eventually retreat out of there before getting wiped a second time. So yeah, Rangers are going to put in so much work. And I think it's even possible that DarkHero's build is just one big elaborate bait. Getting the double Howling Banshees forces the double Shotguns out of BestN00b. Then the double Shotguns, once the double Shotguns are out there, then the double Rangers come out, and there really isn't much of an answer to them. as well as the fact that DarkHero is economically not situated in a great position to buy Assault Marines because he's already put down much of his power farm, so a lot of the requisition to buy Assault Marines was sunk into these generators. Meanwhile, a lot of the power was sunk into the scout upgrades. Okay, Howling Banshee's going to be looking for the Tactical Marines here. Man, they're so low on health, but because they proc that special attack, the Tactical Marines still have to respect it. Eventually, though, Shotgun Scouts will be coming over, and these are Shotgun Scouts that have Sergeants as well, so a lot of power investment into the Scouts. Shotgun Blast does threaten the Howling Banshees, so Howling Banshees will have to retreat. Although I am definitely a little bit concerned about how many models are going to be bled. But it actually turns out that BestN00b will concede there. So that will be a quick victory with DarkHero evening up the series at 1-1. So let's now move on to game number 3 in this series. Game number 3 in our best of 5 series of the Elite League Division A Finals will take place on Ashes of Typhon. DarkHero, this time he will be the one playing the Orc Mekboy, this teleporting ranged hero who can repair and build turrets. And his opponent, BestN00b, this time he wants to play the Farseer. Doesn't even look like, although he's playing the Farseer, that support and spellcasting and buffing commander, doesn't quite look like he's going to be going for the same strategy that DarkHero did. He's already got the double Dire Avenger out. He is getting the Howling Banshee squad, but with this build, since he's committing the requisition to getting a squad of Dire Avengers, it means it's pretty unlikely that he'll also pick up a second squad of Howling Banshees. I wouldn't say it's completely impossible, but I do think it's unlikely. I do think, just with the way Eldar, with the way the race works, I think you really need a tier 1.5 unit at some point in tier 1. Either the Shuriken Cannon or the Ranger Squad. If not, one of both or two of both of them. One of each or two of both. Mekboy going to be able to bleed some of the models off this Dire Avenger squad, so Dire Avengers decide they want to focus on someone else, focus on the Shooter Boys, which are also being tied up by the Farseer, as this Mekboy from DarkHero probably going to be looking... Okay, it does look like he's actually just looking for some cover here. He is in a position where he could find himself getting isolated. Shooter Boys, since they don't have... None of these Shooter Boys have big shooters, however, one of them is getting a Shooter Knob. Shooter Knob will make the squad quite a bit tankier, will provide it a modest increase in damage, and will also enable it to detect if there are any Ranger squads coming out of BestN00b. So we see the node as well as the single generator, definitely indicating that he's not going to be getting either another squad of Howling Banshees or Dire Avengers. That would be extremely unlikely at this point, as I've already mentioned, and it will indeed be the Guardian Weapon Team coming out. Guardian Weapon Team, I think it's definitely a little bit trickier to make work against the Mekboy, who can obviously just teleport in, tie it up. Mekboy will have to fear some Banshees, though. So it'll just depend a lot on the positioning of the Howling Banshees for us to see just how much value this Guardian Weapon Team actually gets. Now, this Shooter Squad got a knob. It did not get neither of the Shooter Squads have their big shooters, so they can't actually control the Howling Banshees at this point. Even though the Howling Banshees don't have their aspect, they can't fleet of foot in, there's also no real control against them. So DarkHero is really just relying on trying to focus them down at range that way in order to eventually force them off, but they should eventually be able to get in melee with a ranged squad as long as we don't have big shooters yet. Farseer looking to take back the natural victory point for BestN00b. And I would say with the timing of the way we have things right now, unless the Storm Boys are committed to to jumping on any of these squads here. I think the Dire Avengers, along with the Guardian Weapon Team, they definitely finish this one generator. And, you know, just with the lack of response here, they can definitely finish the node as well. And it looks like they will try to start doing that. Guardian Weapon Team not even targeting at the moment. I think this is just barely inside the firing arc that it could, but it probably just wants to be focusing it more on being ready to target whatever squad comes in the way, since obviously the value of a Guardian Weapon Team is more in the control than in the damage. Now, while I'm talking about that, at some point, the Farseer for the Best Noob was taken out. In fact, she's gone entirely. Oh no. She's just a splat of blood. So DarkHero will take advantage of this time to finish the generators, finish the node. He'll spread out the Dire Avengers, probably. I mean, he's going to go for the natural requisition point here, get a decap on that. I'm surprised he's not putting anyone here to decap. But I think part of what he may also have to weigh is, at some point, we're going to see the generator bash attempt come out from DarkHero. I might have been mixing up the player names. Of course, I meant Best Noob when I was over here. So he doesn't go for... Best Noob does not go for the decap because he wants to respond to the approach by DarkHero. Now, DarkHero has plenty of damage here. He's got the Sluggers, he's got the Storm Boys. Shooters still don't have big shooters, but, I mean, just the combination of these four squads. Okay, actually, DarkHero going to be committing to the engagement. Double Storm Boys. Wow, I only just realized it right now because I saw the Storm Boys jump in. I'm like, oh, well, but they jumped in, but they didn't jump in on the Guardian Weapon Team. But then another squad of Storm Boys jumped in. Both these squad of Storm Boys getting super low, though. And while I'm talking about that, Howling Banshees will be getting wiped. And as much as these Storm Boys are bleeding, wiping out the squad might just be a bigger prize. And, oh, I missed another one. Oh, God. Best Noob losing 3 squads in that engagement is enough to force the concede, and that will actually be DarkHero going up 2-1 in this series with 2 quick victories. Let's move on to game number 3. Game number 4 in our series will take place on Greentooth Gorge, and Best Noob this time will be playing as the Plague Champion, that Chaos ranged hero with a damage over time bolter, can get melee weapons, can also repair and heal, and his opponent, DarkHero, will be playing as the Lord Commissar. This is a slightly tanky melee hero, kind of a support hybrid as well. He has a free energy shield, but it is the weakest energy shield in the game. Now, as I'm sure you've heard if you've been watching any of my past casts, I have kind of talked about how Imperial Guard, I do feel, are currently regarded as a weak faction in the Elite mod. So, since they are kind of regarded as a weak faction, it does kind of surprise me whenever I actually see them played. Now, out of all of the Imperial Guard heroes, I do believe that the Commissar is regarded as the best of the Imperial Guard heroes. So, with any luck, maybe DarkHero will be able to make it work, but it's still a little bit of a cause for concern. Now, at least for some of the ways that things work in this matchup, typically the Sentinel, of course, a core unit for the Imperial Guard, but typically Chaos are not quite as strong as at putting pressure against the Sentinel in Tier 1 as many other races, since they generally have lower starting range DPS. But that is mitigated somewhat by playing the Plague Champion, who's really the only real Chaos ranged hero. I guess technically you actually could get the Combi Flamer on the Chaos Lord, and then he actually would function as a ranged hero. We also see a double Chaos Space Marine build, something that is not very common. Although extremely common in team games, it's not very common in 1v1. Doesn't give you a lot of utility. Even the overall DPS is not great, given that I've already mentioned that Chaos Space Marines don't exactly have the highest range DPS. But you still see it sometimes in this matchup because it still just gives you more range DPS than you would have if you only went one squad of Chaos Space Marines, which in turn gives you a lot more pressure against the Sentinel as well as the Guardsmen who are trying to repair it. Now, we do see a lot of backcapping coming out of DarkHero. Does look like this node was decapped. I don't know if there was ever actually, I don't know if the node was ever activated there, so I don't know if he had to destroy anything. Because the Commissar Lord, or rather the Lord Commissar, would be extremely slow at bashing generators. His starting sword, I believe, only does something like 30 to 35, and it's definitely only regular melee damage rather than like power melee. Okay, double Chaos Space Marines looking to put in some pressure. We actually have double Chaos Space Marines along with double Heretics. At this point, I would not be as surprised to see maybe a squad of grenade launchers put on one of the Heretic squads, but it wouldn't be right at this second. This squad doesn't really need an upgrade yet. It's busy capping. It doesn't need upgrades to cap. And this one is busy bashing generators, which they will do better with their swords than they will with grenade launchers. Catachan Devils will be out for DarkHero. So obviously this differs quite a bit from, you know, what I saw in like Division B, where there was a heavy emphasis on setup weapons, suppression teams against Imperial Guard because of how much they struggle against that. But we're seeing a different approach here. DarkHero, or rather BestN00b, actually just going with a combination of ranged DPS, the tankiness of the Chaos Space Marines, as well as the Plague Champion, as well as the Heretic Repair Worship. And they're actually, wow! They pushed DarkHero so far back in base that they actually just finished off the Sentinel. I was not expecting that. And that's like the 4th squad kill, or rather unit kill, that I basically missed without expecting. Chaos, oh, that was so close. That actually should have been the Commissar Lord dead. It was the old reliable from the Catachan Devils that saved the Commissar from that. Otherwise, that would have been a dead Commissar. Even though it's not a dead Commissar, this is looking pretty bad for DarkHero. And obviously, this series, although we are in Game 4, this has Game 4, so that means games have been traded back and forth. Or rather, it was, you know, BestN00b winning the first one, then DarkHero winning the next two. Oh my god, Catachan Devils are so low. It's the individual games are not feeling even. It's more like these players are taking turns, just messing each other up. Triple cap still held by BestN00b. That should be the end of the Commissar Lord this time. Trying to use the Commissar Flare, but it won't be enough because he was already, I think he was already taking that damage over time from the Plague Champion's damage over time bolter. Old Reliable goes out, but doesn't connect at all from the Catachan Devils. He has to buy back the the Lord Commissar. But look at this squad just getting ripped apart. Yeah, without the Sentinel. Although I talked about how well the Sentinel can do against Chaos in Tier 1. Without the Sentinel, the Chaos Space Marines will absolutely just rip the Guardsmen apart, because even though their range damage isn't super high, they're just so much tankier than the Guardsmen. Okay, that will be a retreat, though. Not wanting to risk losing a model on this Chaos Space Marine squad, but BestN00b is in an incredibly strong position at the moment. Over a 200-point victory point lead. And DarkHero is so slow to really getting out there to try to get the victory points back in his favor. He's trying to actually focus on the resources because he's not doing well economically either. He only has 2 squads in the Commissar. He barely has any control of the map. He's not getting to Tier 2 anytime soon. And he's also not winning fights anytime soon. I mean, the strength in numbers. And this is also, when you have the map control, you can also afford to group up your entire army to just kind of bully your way in a fight. But when you don't have the map control, you're faced with the difficult choice of either grouping up your entire army to try to win a fight, or splitting up your units to get map control, in which case you definitely don't win the fight. I think that's the Aura of Discipline. Yep, Aura of Discipline on the Commissar, so we did see the Catachan Devils getting some healing, but no healing for the Commissar, and he will go down again. And this is a brutal game. This is a brutal game in DarkHero's, in BestN00b's favor. I'm just gonna mix up those names back and forth. More generator bashing going. Tier 2 coming in for BestN00b, and nowhere in sight for DarkHero. About to be a triple cap. I think this game is pretty much done for DarkHero, and I think it's more just a question of how soon he would like to move on to the next one. Commissar Lord activating his energy shield, but it's already gone. Some decent damage going in from the Catachan Devils at close range, but the Commissar will be dead again. So that will be a GG called, and it will actually be our series tied up at 2-2 as we move into our 5th and final game. Final game in the series will take place on Civil Frontier. DarkHero this time will be playing as the Force Commander. Blood Ravens even, tanky melee hero who can buff with Battlecry and disrupt with Battlecry. His opponent, BestN00b, will be playing as the Lictor Alpha, infiltrating melee hero for the Tyranids that can displace and assassinate. Now, since we see the Lictor Alpha, I think it is common for Lictor Alpha players to try to be a little bit more aggressive with their opening capture orders, because they can disrupt some opening capture orders with the Flesh Hook, put pressures on squads. However, I think the Force Commander would win head-to-head against the Lictor Alpha. So that's why we see the Lictor Alpha infiltrating, ignoring the Force Commander, then, yeah, going to start looking for these Scout models. Flesh Hook used right then and there, and that should be... Okay, Scout model's still alive, but for how long? Not much longer, because there is the follow-up right there. And right out of the gate, there is no counter to this, so that does mean you eventually need to invest in a counter, need the detection, which comes from the Scouts, who are also the squad that is most vulnerable against the Lictor Alpha. So Tactical Marines are also out for DarkHero. So aggressive positioning by BestN00b. Again, just throwing his weight around with that Lictor Alpha. I mean, the Scouts really just can't do much about that. They're going for the garrison, but they're so low on hit points. I mean, not that the Lictor Alpha can actually threaten them that much, but I don't also really see what the benefit is to put them in the garrison. The damage that they put on the Lictor Alpha is so low. The Lictor Alpha was even put in cover. Even though he can't shoot back, just because he would take so little damage. Meanwhile, aggressive triple Hormigaunt build, something that I see very commonly when people play Tyranids these days. Now, it gives you the damage as a Tyranid player to put a lot of pressure on the power farms. Gives you a lot of retreat killing potential. And this is BestN00b with control of most of the map at the moment. He's about to get the decap on DarkHero's natural requisition point. And again, look at how oppressive the Lictor Alpha is. I personally think the Lictor Alpha is probably one of the most frustrating heroes to play against in the entire game. I did actually, although I've been focused far more on casting than actually playing, oh god, and look at that! He just waits for the Tactical Marines to move forward again. It's like just without some kind of detection, the Lictor Alpha just gets so much free reign here. In the limited amount that I've actually been playing, rather than just casting, I did have one game against a Lictor Alpha where I really just remembered how frustrating it can be to play against a Lictor Alpha player, or just the Lictor Alpha period. So we do finally see the Sergeant upgraded on the Scouts so that they will be able to detect the Lictor Alpha, but that's still only... It really is only that the Scouts can detect it. So, like, right now, for instance, once the Lictor Alpha gets back out on the field, if the Scouts are not near the Tactical Marines, then the Lictor Alpha can just go up to them and start meleeing them as well. This also makes things tricky for map control, because in order for the detection to be available, You need the scouts near your tactical marines. If you split off your scouts, then you don't have detection for the tactical marines, and that might even be... But at the same time, the scouts are themselves so vulnerable to the Lictor Alpha that it might be even part of the reason why... I was going to say part of the reason why DarkHero went for a second tack instead of a second scout, but now that I see that he did get a second scout as well. Meanwhile, Flamer Tactical Marines taking so much damage here, but the Lictor is actually taking quite a bit of damage too. Oh, but that special attack, such a timely special attack, knocks the Tactical Marines right into the double Hormagaunts. A nice grenade as well, though, catching, I think, 6 or 7 models there. Okay, I think this one Tactical Marine model will be lucky to get out alive, but that was still a scary engagement for DarkHero right there. So the Flamer Tactical Marine Squad has been forced off the field. Yes, it has been forced off the field. Did get knocked over. So we don't see more of the pressure put on the generator farm for DarkHero against BestN00b, while BestN00b was continuing the pressure on DarkHero's farm. I don't think DarkHero has ever actually had a generator. I think he's only had nodes, and so far every single one of them has been taken down rather quickly. Probably just going to see a retreat from the Hormagaunts as soon as they finish the node. Okay, it looks like they're looking for a better retreat path, but even just moving back like that, they were so vulnerable, took so much damage from the attacks. They were also just so low and lost 3 models in that engagement. Double Raveners now out for BestN00b. This is going to make things also really tough. Double Raveners ultimately do counter a lot of the units that DarkHero has. They can just burrow disrupt, and then tie up any of these Space Marine squads in melee. Nothing really beats them in melee aside from maybe the Force Commander. Actually, I'm not 100% sure how if both Tactical Marines and Raveners are at full health, who actually does better there. But what I do know is that the Raveners do great range damage. They're just gonna burn down the scouts so quickly if the Lictor Alpha didn't already put enough threat on them. Tactical Marines now in a huge amount of trouble. Tactical Marines will get out of there with 2 models, but the Hormagaunts are in there. They don't manage to take another model off the Tactical Marines. And the Hormagaunts themselves, even though they might have suffered a loss or 2, they're just so cheap by comparison to a Tactical Marine. I'm going to select this Hormagaun squad and just take a look and just check what the requisition reinforcement cost is. But the truth is, it's going to be pretty low because this is a baseline squad. You get it for free at the start of the game. Under or over 20, 16. Yeah, so cheap. Flesh Hook used on the Force Commander, seeing if he could snipe him on retreat, but it wasn't quite enough, and that is definitely good for DarkHero. I don't think he wants to give up the Force Commander and have to buy him back for 200 requisition to try to stay in this game, because yet another generator bash is coming. Tactical Marines will be getting out of here pretty quickly. However, scouts are in a position where they're probably going to risk losing a model. Yeah, they already just automatically retreat there, seeing the Lictor Alpha. Lictor Alpha also has an upgrade here. It's the Toxin Miasma. Reduces the speed and damage of a unit that it hits. Also does some damage over time in addition to just the front-loaded damage. Okay, Raveners will be overwhelmed there, so they will be knocked down and be forced to retreat. 1 model does go down for that Ravener brood.
We must reverse the course of the battle. Adding power generator.
Victory point still in favor of BestN00b. As we see Tactical Marines getting in melee. Are they able to get out of there with all 3 models? Shotgun Blast is used. Does ensure that they get out of there with all 3 models, which I think is definitely the right play.
Generator operational.
So DarkHero will be moving down to the bottom with the Force Commander. Unfortunately, I missed it at some point. I missed pretty much all the kills in this series, but one of those scout squads was killed, and of course that's going to make things quite rough. Less detection. Pretty nice dodge. Oh, it wasn't even quite enough a dodge, or was that a special attack? I forget. Either way, it looked like an attempted dodge. The scouts here, they're so low in hit points. What are they going for, the garrison? Oh no, they're going to get wiped here. They go in the garrison, but they're so low in hit points. They could be finished off by range damage from the Raveners, I'm pretty sure. Looks like a drop pod is coming down. A drop pod, though, that's going to be a third Tactical Marine squad? Yeah, third Tactical Marine squad. Meanwhile, the scouts, though, taking cover, only being threatened by the Hormagaunts, who can only do damage to the garrison, but cannot actually damage the squads inside of it. Meanwhile, Lictor Alpha here, being so oppressive, finally gets hit by a shotgun blast, and he will be forced off the field. But the map control has really been in favor of BestN00b for pretty much this entire game. So BestN00b will be going to Tier 2. I don't think DarkHero has ever really had a successful generator bash. There was that one time when the flame attacks were here, but I don't remember how well that one went. Oh no. That's a rough knockback. Grenade was thrown, but far too late. They were knocked back toward BestN00b's army. And this is just going to be another full retreat from DarkHero. What can he do?
The Tyranid swarm is overwhelming a victory point.
Hormagaunts will also be just doing more of a generator bash. And I mean, look at the Force Commander's attempts to dissuade them from this. He's getting special attacks, knocks them down, but not all of the models actually get hit, so they just continue bashing the generator. And it's nowhere near enough damage to really threaten the squad until we actually have most of DarkHero's, well, not even most, literally all of what's left of DarkHero's army. DarkHero has a triple cap against him. Man, he came back so strong in games 2 and 3, but in fact, none of the games in this series have been close, except for even Game 1 wasn't that close, although Game 1 was definitely the closest one, but most of these games have not been close. It's just been a brutal domination in either direction. And unfortunately for DarkHero, it does look like this one last brutal domination will be going in favor of BestN00b as we see the scouts get wiped, Tactical Marines are in a huge amount of trouble, and finally we do see DarkHero calling the GG. And if that is indeed the case, which I think it will be, that will mean that we will be crowning BestN00b as the champion of Elite League Division A. Indeed, that will be what is happening. So again, he is the champion. Overall, just kind of has the best results in Elite Mod at the moment, I think. I do hope you enjoyed it, and have a good night.